Welcome to this peace panel on building peace through an urban lens, co-organized by the Global Cities Hub, the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime, get it right, and Peace in Our Cities there. My name is Duong. I'm the co-director of the Global Cities Hub, an organization that seeks to do two things. First, to connect local and regional governments to our international ecosystem here, and also to elevate the urban agenda in Geneva. So our mission is really to promote a more inclusive, multilateralism that goes really beyond the traditional framework of nation states, and to engage crucial stakeholders that are local government. We believe that cities and local governments play a crucial role in peace building, and that their voice must be heard at the global level, and hence this event today. I'm extremely pleased to open this event. Allow me to thank the Geneva Peacebuilding Platform for hosting us, and to also welcome our three distinguished speakers who have traveled from all around the world to be here in person with us in Geneva. So we come together today with a fundamental question in mind that constitutes the theme of the Geneva Peace Week. What is peace? The opening on Monday reminded us that peace is multifaceted, complex, dynamic, and requiring diverse approaches. So during this peace panel, we will explore the specific dimension of peace in urban settings. What does peace mean at the local level? In a city, how do urban spaces contribute to peace or hinder it, basically? Our three speakers will explore three distinct settings where the issue of land control is paramount to peace. We'll have Ramallah, of course, which is a city under occupation. We have Aleppo in Syria, a divided city in a post-conflict setting. And we'll look at cities where criminal organization exert control over parts of the urban landscape, where you even talk about urban predation. So before we start, a few housekeeping matters, and I guess you know it now that it's probably not your first event here at the Geneva Peace Week, but the event is hybrid, it is being recorded. There is interpretation through the Enterprify, app. You can scan the QR code that is being shown on the screen there, and that will take you through the language that you prefer. But we will speak, all of us, in English only today. And the event will be organized in two parts. We'll have first a discussion with our speakers here, and then we'll go into a Q&A session that hopefully will be as interactive as possible. So keep all your questions for the second part of the event. And we'll start with our first very distinguished speaker today. Mr. Issa Kassis, you are the mayor of Ramallah in Palestine since 2022. And Ramallah, of course, we know is the economic and administrative capital of Palestine. So the world's attention has, of course, been very much focused on Gaza since October 7. But the West Bank has also been affected by ongoing violence. So could you please share with us what is the current situation in Ramallah today? And that would be my first question, and then I'll continue with other questions. Mayor, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much. I'm honored really to be here with you today. Well, when you look at October 7th, you feel that something started at that date. We see it as a continuation of 76 years of occupation. It's like a battle in this war that started 76 years ago. The taste is different, the killing is massive, and the West Bank is not being watched, I would say, because the focus is on Gaza being the hot area. And but in the West Bank, there's more that is being done in the West Bank, which is more precious, I would say, even precious than life itself. What is more precious than life, as far as we see it, is the land. Many people are being killed because of the land. And I always say, I don't want to die for my land. I want to live for my land. I want to build a state and to have self-determination and to get my independence. But the occupier is crawling in the West Bank in the midst of this war in Gaza. And the West Bank is boiling. It's like Swiss cheese, we always say it. It's like isolated areas, isolated communities. We say Ramallah, Bethlehem, and other cities in the West Bank. They are fully isolated, blocked, closed with checkpoints. And when you say checkpoints, this means that you cannot drive more than 60 kilometers per hour. Then you have to stop and cross a checkpoint and go to the what we call in local government rural areas, which is outside city centers even, the outskirts of the city. This is what we call Area B and C zones, according to Oslo Agreement, which is around 80% of the land. Ramallah we are functioning within 20 to 30% of the land, A and partly B. A is fully controlled by us, both security and administrative. B is administratively under our control, security-wise, both, and C is under Israeli control. That's where the settlements are. Slightly less than 1 million settlers today in the West Bank, and they are now being used as another arm of occupation, attacking cities in different ways, getting their sheep in our lands as people moving in the mountains, just for the sake of getting the sheep for a walk. It's like different things in different ways, and then burning trees and attacking Palestinians. These are armed people, and these are people who are trained on using machine guns. So Palestinians living in the outskirts of Ramallah, they just stay at home, and because these settlers are controlled by the Israeli occupation forces. And after October 7th, and the perception of the Israeli society on us as Palestinians, of course, they lost lives, and we are against the loss of lives. They lost around 1,400 people, and that's not little. And imagine how would they look at us. So, but they're being fueled with hatred and used through this brutal government of Israel to attack Palestinians and confiscate slowly more and more land. So yes, the West Bank is in a state of war, but a silent war. What they are gaining a lot more than what they are gaining in Gaza. In Gaza, they're gaining nothing. They're just killing people, and they did not achieve one single target or goal of theirs. But in the West Bank, they are crawling, they are moving, and they are putting tents and prefabricated homes here and there, up the mountains, in the valleys, in the fields. And these are points where they settle in temporarily until such time it's converted to a no man's land, and then a military zone, and then a settlement. That's how it is.
Thank you. And I guess we'll go back to the issue of land crawling later and in the urban context. And I went to another event yesterday, where one of the speakers said, it might be a little bit of a fantasy to talk about peace today in such troubled times. But I think we believe, all of us, probably all of us here as well, that it is more than crucial to keep talking about peace and to instill hope. So what does peace mean for you at your local level in Ramallah? How do you build peace amidst the conflict? And please provide us a very concrete initiative that you've been taken to give hope to people in Ramallah.
Thank you. Well, allow me first to put 2 lines under the word conflict. There's no conflict. It's occupation. There's nothing in conflict in Palestine. let's call things by their names, and let's then assess what's going on and question why those 500 people, 5 million people acting as such. Why? Because they're savages, because they're terrorists, or because there's something wrong. For me, peace is justice. Justice is the prerequisite for any peace. That's how I see it personally. Professionally, I'm a banker, by the way, by profession. And I ran my fintech, my startup, before I assumed my job as a mayor. And I'm a very practical person coming from the private sector. When I look at peace in the municipality, in the local government, I see restrictions, multiple restrictions that hinders me from achieving what I'm elected to achieve, what I promised to achieve for those who elected me, the promises that I listed in my slate during election time. Examples. You will be shocked to know what I'm about to say now. It took us 12 years to have our own cemetery. 12 years to have a cemetery in the outskirts of the city. I cannot bury people in city center. Yeah. So I have to go a little bit south and build it in area that is zoned A, B, and C. It's within. We had to wait for 12 years to get approval from the Israeli authorities to build on our own land that is recognized under UN resolutions. That's the first example. It takes the truck for the landfill to move solid waste. It takes 8 hours. 8 hours to reach the landfill, which is 90 minutes away, or 50 kilometers. That's 90 for a truck. A truck that carries 38 tons of solid waste. I generate 120 tons of solid waste a day in the city. The city has 78,000 people, residents, and around 300,000 people living, visit Ramallah. They work, they visit, they work and leave. Lots of investments in Ramallah, all the banks and the insurance companies headquarters, the stock market, and the telecom, the president office, all the security departments of the PA, the ministries, etc. So lots of people, they come into Ramallah and they use the infrastructure, etc. So solid waste is generated. So we need to move the solid waste to a landfill. What would I do if the municipality cannot move solid waste? They say, put it in area A. Area A is just extremely small, and I decide upon where to put my solid waste, not you decide on my behalf, especially that it's my land. So they put restrictions on the roads to Jenin up north. It takes 8 hours for the truck to reach there. And then the contractor came to me and said, I cannot take this. I'm paying fuel and I'm paying my driver. Lots of things that has to do with our, the daily operation. And for me to remain clean, I need a minimum of 3 trucks a day. 4 trucks a day. For shipments a day to transfer solid waste. I cannot do but one. And imagine the accumulation of solid waste. And that's why now we're thinking outside the box and try to work on gasification or on a separation waste separation line or a zero waste investment, which costs a lot. Because if you look at it from economies of scale point of view, it's not financially feasible to have a zero waste $6, $7, $8 million investment to get rid of 120 tons. So I have to import solid waste from neighboring cities. And to ship solid waste from other neighboring cities, also they need to go into checkpoints. That's, for me, that's peace. I mean, peace secures mobility, trade of people. And the list is long. To move, how to secure better life for my people. You were talking about hope. And yes, we believe in hope. We're highly resilient people. We never and will never lose hope. And that's, I believe, that's one of my mission statements for me as a mayor, to bring up good people, because we are also responsible for public schools, for bringing new generation. 65% of my people are below the age of 40. So we're a young society. So you have to bring into the society good people who believe in democracy, who believe in equality, who believe in women's rights, who believe in accepting others despite their differences, etc., etc. And therefore, it's very important to strike this balance. And imagine for a local government or a municipality, that when you close your eyes and imagine a municipality, you think of this trash collection car, or paving the streets, or fixing sewage lines, or waste. Rainwater drainage systems. That's what local governments do. But in Palestine, no, we have a national role that we play. And culture, for example, is one very important thing that we work on. I spend millions on culture every year just to bring up good people and always discuss and market hope.
Can you give us a very concrete example about this, for instance?
We have 13 festivals a year. 13. And these festivals are free entrance and free internet. And it touches on all age groups, from music to food, to heritage, the dresses, to the fintech and to the tech. I have the first innovation hub that is run by a municipality in the Middle East. There's no municipality in the whole Middle East. When you talk about the Middle East, you imagine Dubai and the high rises in Dubai. Dubai doesn't have an innovation hub run by the municipality. It's all run by the private sector or by an NGO. But in Ramallah, I feel obligated towards this stake of the society to bring them hope for a better tomorrow, chance for them to work on their startups, for entrepreneurs to see value in their city, and eventually live for Palestine. That's the core, as far as I can see it. The core is to live for your country, not to die for your country. We don't want you under the ground. I want you on the ground. I want you to resist by exist on the land. Don't excuse yourself. I cannot. We are already 3 million in the West Bank. I cannot afford to lose more people. I see it from this point of view. Peace for me is a total different concept from a municipality or a local government. A local government that is in Palestine. Because if you look at local governments elsewhere, they see peace differently. They see peace of mind. They see peace in the streets. They see, But for me, no. For me, it's a totally different thing. Cohesion and just to get people together and create a resilient society, a society that is sustainable, to secure sustainability of the city. I cannot run the city. I need my people to run the city. I want my people to see a good example during my 4 years term. And for me then to hand over to those who carry the flag and continue with the Palestinian case and the Palestinian cause for justice and for independence. This is how we see it at Ramallah municipality. And that's how Ramallah is becoming a model city. And that's what I want the world to see. Palestinians, you have Ramallah and you have Gaza. You have highly educated people. We are amongst the top countries in the world, who earn their masters and doctorate degrees. We are amongst the top in the world per capita. We are highly educated people. We do not just come from. It did not came from the sky and just fall on this land. The land is called after us. That's our land. Palestine is our land, and we gave up part of it, and we acknowledged the state of Israel, and then we started calling for our right ever since Israel started, and back in 48, and until the very today, we have the same vision, and nothing disrupts us, nothing whatsoever, nothing. So the cause is much deeper than a local government service-oriented organization, etc. Sorry, I took long.
No, it's fine. I think it was very interesting to hear your conception of peace at a municipal level, and it makes it very clear because we all, live in a city somehow, so we do very much relate to what you said. Quick question before we move on to the next speaker about Gaza. Of course, I cannot, not ask you this question about basically. We're in touch with mayors in Gaza. How can we think about reconstruction there, in cities completely destroyed? What do you do basically if it's, allowed for you to?
Yeah, of course it's allowed. I'm allowed. I'm democratically elected. I have all the right to say whatever I want, whenever I want, and whatever I want to say.
Also watching for your life.
Yeah.
If you are backed by people, then you're in better shape. Trust me. People elected me. People chose me. I did not just impose myself on anybody. Anyhow, so imagine that I met the mayor of Gaza in Istanbul. That's how I managed to see him. I cannot. I mean, I'm as close to him as you are. I just cannot see him. I cannot write him. I cannot just put a comment on social media. I cannot put a like on BDS. I just cannot. You can, but I cannot. Because if I do it, they will come and take me and say, this is, as far as we are concerned, we see it as a terrorist organization, and you liked it, so you're part of it. Then you go on the defense and try to defend your case. So I met him in Turkey. And he said, well, there's zero thing that I can do. I lost everything. I lost my people. I lost my employees. I lost my cars. We lost everything. And there's very little, unfortunately, that we can do other than sending money to organizations to give them food. And don't underestimate the value of the Gazans. Gazans are highly resilient. I mean, I did business with Gaza. I had 4 branches when I was a banker 6 years ago. I had branches in Gaza, and I know the people there. I know how the tech literacy is in Gaza. I mean, they are amazing. The arts, the paintings in Gaza. I will do a painting exhibition in Ramallah City Hall for Gazans, just for the world to see. I believe Gazans are even capable of coming out of the ash and revive it, and they will come up out of this even stronger. But yeah, I'm not in direct contact with him, unfortunately.
Thank you for that, Mayor. Thank you. And we'll put Ramallah on the side for now, but hopefully we'll come back during the discussion afterwards. Before moving on to the next speaker, can we have a video message from the Executive Director of UN Habitat, who could not be here with us today, but she kindly sent us some of her, thinking, because UN Habitat is the UN agency working on sustainable urbanization, works directly, of course, with cities and local government. And it is interesting to hear how they address the issue of urban security, violence, safety in their mandate. So if we could show the video message. Thank you, Tatiana.
It's 3 minutes. Honorable guests, distinguished delegates, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you. I would like to thank the organizers for the opportunity to share with you some of the contributions that UN Habitat has made over the years in shaping global urban development and security strategies. Our work has been instrumental in fostering inter-agency coordination among key actors, from humanitarian affairs to peacebuilding and healthy cities programming. UN Habitat's core mandate is tackling the global housing crisis, which mirrors broader issues of inequality, exclusion, and poverty in urban areas. Addressing these challenges requires integrated transformative actions that make a real impact on vulnerable communities. Notably, over 80% of violence occurs outside conflict zones, especially in slums and favelas, underscoring the need for innovative solutions. Ladies and gentlemen, how cities are planned, governed, and managed directly impacts the levels of violence and security. The regulation of resources, public spaces, and overall engagement with local communities plays a significant role in the production or prevention of violence. As we accelerate actions toward achieving the SDGs, we must acknowledge that the ambitions of SDG 11 to create safe, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable cities are closely linked to SDG 16, which focuses on peace, justice, and strong institutions. These two goals must be bridged for us to achieve the 2030 Agenda successfully. UN Habitat's approach considers urban security as part of the larger development challenge. Our work over the past 3 decades has focused on localizing knowledge and building comprehensive security policies tailored to a specific urban context. Through our efforts, we have generated a repository of proven practices that highlight the importance of integrating violence prevention into broader urban interventions. Critical to this approach are land, housing, infrastructure, and basic services. To develop truly comprehensive urban security strategies, community participation is essential. We advocate for a human-centered, multi-sectoral approach grounded in a bottom-up process that empowers local actors to find solutions. Guided by the social and environmental function of the land, our focus is on neighborhoods as the core unit of analysis, with housing serving as the framework to address city-wide security concerns. In the international community today, there is a pressing need to document lessons learned from different urban contexts to create adaptable, evidence-based prevention programs. Programs that will connect the experiences of cities around the world and help address their unique security challenges. As part of this effort, we are pleased to continue our collaboration with the Geneva Peace Week and its partners. We are working to propose a joint program framework on cities and human security with Geneva, serving as a hub for this activity. We'll bring together Geneva-based actors in the fields of humanitarian work, disaster risk reduction, human rights, and health, all working together on the implementation of the new urban agenda and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. It is our vision to position Geneva as a global hub and center of excellence in cities and human security, leveraging the existing competencies within this UN center and our regional offices. By doing so, we aim to scale up the impact of our interventions and build a more secure, sustainable urban future for all. I wish you all a very successful meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And special thanks to our colleague Graham, as the head of the UN Habitat office in Geneva, who will be there to engage later, of course, on the Q&A. I'm I'm particularly interested in the hub that you would like to create on cities and human security. And we'll go back to that. Thank you. I think the video message is a very nice segue with, UN Habitat talking about the importance of land, housing, infrastructure, services as basically drivers of security or insecurity in cities. And we'll go to Aleppo. AlHakam, you are a native of Aleppo. You left the city in 2012 after the rising, the demonstration, the revolution in 2011 in Syria. You're now doing a lot of different things, among which your position as researcher for the Aleppo project. That's a project, if I understood well, that gathers people from various backgrounds to think about, to reflect upon what happened in the past, to document what happened during the conflict, and to, above all, think about the future of a city that was completely destroyed, damaged by the war, basically. So first question is, of course, what is the situation today in Aleppo?
I have to say I'm really honored to be on this panel with everybody who's here. Thank you. There is no fighting at the moment in Aleppo city. However, there can only be an illusion of peace. The Syrian revolution started in 2011. About a year after that, Aleppo city devolved into a place of armed conflict. And quickly it became infamous for its dividedness into eastern and western Aleppo, with the old city falling into the forces in eastern Aleppo, the forces opposed to the regime of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Hafez is his father, who was ruling before him from 1970. So the Assads, the opposition to that, which started with peaceful protests, quickly developed into an armed conflict. And a city of 3 million, that is Aleppo, became divided pretty much in half, with about 1.5 million living in the rebel-held areas in the east and the old city. And with the regime wanting to take this back, starting from mid-2012. And with that came the acts and the process of herbicide, what I and many other academics think is fit to call what was done, which is both a tool of the war as well as an end goal of the war itself. And that took the shape of pummeling eastern Aleppo with initially whatever rockets the Syrian army had, but then scrambling, putting together whatever fits in a barrel of gunpowder and nails, whatever shrapnels can exist, scrap metal, and dropping these from helicopters over areas outside the control of the Syrian regime. This only started about 1 year from when the opposition took hold of the area, so in 2013, and continued on a near daily basis with multiple of these. Each of these barrels can take down a building. It was shocking how initially in the first year, Eastern Aleppo flourished. For the first time, people felt free to protest. You could never, since the 60s even, when the Ba'ath party of Syria, and even more from 1970 when Hafez al-Assad, father of the current president, became president, you could never think about protesting. Whenever that happened, there was immediately violent crackdown, forcible disappearance in prisons. But for the first time in Eastern Aleppo, they flourished. There was a lot of NGOs being active, a lot of thoughts being discussed. And there was a corridor open to Turkey, which at the time, at the moment, the Turkish government is, in my opinion, a little bit oppressive of anything that's not conforming to its own vision. But at the time, it kept it open to whatever international organizations wanted to do, whatever the local activists were working on. And they had this bloodline through Turkey. There was an increase in the population initially in Eastern Aleppo. But from 2013 until the end of 2016, About 1.5 million people were, hemorrhaged out of the city gradually with these barrel bombs, which really aimed at making the city uninhabitable. 8 hours of train yesterday, I'm sorry. Even though I live in southern Germany. So now, from the end of 2016, December, when there was a deal of basically surrender and eviction, even of the last remaining 34,000 people who still lived in Aleppo out of 1.5 million, even those last 34,000 left on what gained a lot of symbolism, the green buses. The green buses, these are public transport Syrian buses that happen to be used to basically bus the citizens out of their homes. In many of those such deals, there are similar cases in other cities such as Damascus. And it was used as an insult by the regime, usually, wait until we put you on those green buses, basically, and evict you out of your homes. So at the moment, you asked me, sorry, that was a bit of a context. What's it like at the moment? From the beginning of 2017 onwards, there's no fighting in the city. However, there's still the very same government that had been disappearing people, often without trace. Many years after the start of the war, we started to find traces in the civil registries where people started to appear as died of pneumonia in prison or of a heart disease. Usually they're tortured to death. And many years after the fact. Eastern Aleppo remains mostly destroyed and mostly uninhabited. And I want, you did ask me in preparation for this to give as many concrete examples as possible. And I'll give you the example of my family's home. It's a beautiful late Ottoman house but very modest at the same time. In Old Aleppo, in what you call in French quartier populaire, that was immediately subjected to these barrel bombs. Pretty much all the closest mosques to us, they're all either Ottoman or Mamluk. We're talking about, historical buildings here were destroyed with these barrel bombs. About 30-40% of the houses are destroyed. And out of, we lived in a cul-de-sac of 11 households. Out of these, my mom just told me 2 days ago that only 2 families have returned. And the rest, I'm in touch with many of them. The rest are in bad places in Antakya, for instance, across the border in Turkey, or in IDP camps in Idlib or other parts of rebel-held Syria, the parts that remained kind of outside of the regime, by control of the Syrian regime. And they all wish to return. There are those neighbors of ours who live in Antakya. They're asked repeatedly to leave the informal settlement they live in, which anyway eventually got destroyed with the earthquake that hit southern Turkey and Syria. They became displaced but can't go back to Syria, even though none of them, by the way, participated in the Syrian revolution. They didn't take part in protests. They don't have any public opinions that are on Facebook or whatnot that can be traced back. But just for the fact that they are from there, and they are often, especially men, young men, they are perceived as a threat. And they don't feel safe to go back, even though they're desperate to go back. And instead, they've started to ask for help and go to other cities, such as Ankara, that weren't affected by the earthquake, and start from scratch where they still have their home back. I don't want to,
I think we can, thank you for that, Hakam. I think, so basically you have Eastern Aleppo that is left in ruins and Western Aleppo that is still kind of thriving somehow and being developed by the government now and basically living a bit of another life, basically in parallel. You mentioned in your work the term of herbicide, and you also referred to that earlier. What does that mean? Can you elaborate on that, herbicide?
So herbicide is the act of killing a city, right? The side is the killing, like homicide, homicide, and genocide. And it is a component, herbicide is the killing of the urban, a component and a sign of also genocide. And there are many academics, such as Yassin Al-Haj Saleh, who refer to what happened to Syria as a genocide. But I'm not per se a genocide expert to kind of elaborate on that. But what you have is a situation where Aleppo city, a city of 3 million originally, had Sunni Muslims and Christians living in it, and no big Alawite community. The Alawites are the denomination that the Assads belong to. And the Assads immediately portrayed with the systematic use of media. The state media was very inefficient, but they realized the importance of tapping into private TV channels that they owned to portray the Syrian revolution as being, because it's opposed to their rule as Alawites, because they are Alawites, they try to portray it as if it's antagonistic to Alawites. And so here we're looking at intersectionality in Aleppo of the sect. You not being Alawite makes you an easier target of the Syrian regime. But also what you asked me about Eastern Aleppo, Western Aleppo division of class, because Eastern Aleppo, where my family house is, usually they're slightly poorer, not very much poorer, but they're more traditional. They haven't kind of caught up with university degree, life of career path, and all of that. So they tend to have fewer means available to them as well, and that also made them easier targets. And than say people in Western Aleppo, where the regime tried to kind of win their heart a little bit. And you see it in the rhetoric the whole time. We talk about terrorist dens, or referring to informal settlements where poorer people live. And shockingly, this is coming from a government that is the Syrian Ba'ath Party. It's a socialist party, so they have supposedly pro-workers, pro-poor people ideology, but that's not the reality. Yeah.
Thank you. One last quick question about, you've talked very much about the situation in Aleppo, the difficulty, the challenges, the divide itself, basically. Yeah. But what are the prospects for peace today? Is there any hope?
Yeah, believe me, I don't know any Syrian who doesn't have hope. They might sarcastically or jokingly tell you, forget about it, forget it. But then they start to say, but maybe in 10 years, there could be better conditions that we could go back. Maybe we would one day be able to. And what would that necessitate? The situation in Syria overall is extremely complicated. Geopolitically, of course, you have understanding internationally that the Syrian regime has committed war crimes, and as such, it's being punished through sanctions, making the economy very bad generally. But you could still, if you have your home, at least you have your home to start with. And if we could achieve that, it would make the situation much better. But what would make that possible is removing restrictions on people's movement, which is something similar to what Mr. Kassis has just said. If people can't move freely, there can be no, urban life, no viable urban life. And there's a lot of blame going on the destruction, saying, oh, it's destroyed. No, people rebuild. Just give them a chance to go back to their homes. They won't even wait for assistance before they start to rebuild. So what we need is enabling people. And there is a big role that international organizations, or I know my colleague Antonio works on multilateral campaigns for a bigger role in multilateral parties in urban development. What they could do, and they're already engaged, is put in sufficient pressure and give us guarantees that people can return. Their engagement should be conditional. At the moment, there is engagement. We have UNDP, for instance, rebuilding big parts of the souk. A lot of the time, even the owners of the souk in the Souk al-Dine of Old Aleppo, which tend to be very rich, these are extremely expensive shops of up to $1 million each. Even they are, most of them, more than half, haven't returned to take up these shops that have been renovated for them because the right conditions are not there. And so there is a lot of work. What I believe is important of what's happening and should continue to happen is working on infrastructure. That's never a bad idea. But even that, don't we always talk about participatory planning? The executive director of the UN Habitat was also talking about human-centered approaches. And the people of the city are not just in the neighborhoods. She mentioned the neighborhoods, but also if we want truly human-centered, we need to look at those who have this connection to Aleppo, and they are often outside. So you need to involve them, but at least don't take away their homes in mass projects. Maybe work on infrastructure until we manage to get them back so that they can participate in the planning of their reconstruction.
Thank you so much. So indeed, allowing return and using urban development as a way to foster peace.
Yeah.
Great. Let me now turn to our third speaker, Antonio Sampaio. You are the thematic lead on illicit economies and cities at the GTOC, the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime. You recently published a very interesting report on urbanization and organized crime, but your areas of interest are much broader than that. And you've worked in the past on armed conflict in cities during your tenure at the Institute for Strategic Studies that we all know pretty well. So we know that today armed conflicts occur in cities mainly. We see it, in Gaza, in Ukraine, in Sudan, in Lebanon, of course. So what implication does the urbanization of conflict have on peace?
So first, I want to discuss with you and share some, I guess you could call it findings from these recent writings that I've done on urbanization, conflict, security, organized crime, because the urbanization of conflict and the linkage between urbanization and security means something very concrete and very urgent. It's nothing theoretical, it's nothing like fancy concepts and etc. It's something very practical, and I think we've seen some of these practicalities, sobering practicalities and implications in my previous, my colleagues' speeches. The way that conflict and violence can be so acutely felt in the areas where people are living. So, in international security, you tend to discuss issues like, someone crossed the border, and that's a major issue. But sometimes, there's no one living that border, and that is almost symbolic in the national, international level. The imagined communities, right? The national borders can be seen as symbolic, whereas in cities, crossing an urban border or acting with force in a certain area has very concrete physical implications for homes, for communities. And I really liked, although again, it's a sobering fact, but I liked how the issue of mobility came up, because the study of urban violence and urban conflict borrows a lot from urban studies. And I've been calling for more contact between these two communities, and it hasn't happened much yet. But in urban studies, urban planners, architects, they all talk about how the city is this systemic area, and it's all about mingling of diverse people. That's what, essentially today, at least, what we conceive of city is as a place where many people come to live. And violence and conflict, it goes straight to the heart of that and tries to destroy it. And then there are the resilient, the mayors and the civil society organizations that try to counter it. But conflict and violence tends to form boundaries and divisions within the city. And the other aspect of urbanization, of conflict, and many of these challenges that I think we need to urgently be aware of is that it's not just conflicts. There is an academic debate about whether urbanization has meant more conflicts in cities or not. But regardless of how we answer that question, there is also the simple fact that there are simply more cities emerging in areas affected by conflict. So in this report on urbanization, peace and security that I produced with GTOC and Peace in Our Cities, We look at two very brief facts. One, in the list of 18 countries in the World Bank's list of conflict-affected countries, 17 are urbanizing much faster than the global average. The only one that is not is Ukraine, where, in Eastern Europe, there is a long-standing trend of population decline. But so that carries its own implications. One very concrete example of that is a project we did on the Lake Chad region, in which we started looking at Maiduguri in northeastern Nigeria, which is the largest city, has, I think, over 1 million inhabitants. And we saw that it's relatively safe. But when we started to look at the towns and villages around them, we saw that a lot of them had grown quite rapidly and become cities. So new cities are emerging in areas heavily affected by conflict that we often think are rural. And what it means is that it's not just semantics, it's not just a separation. It's because these issues that we've seen in Ramallah, in Aleppo, these the conflict entering everyday life and separating communities and affecting populations is coming to these villages and towns as well. So we saw in the Lake Chad region that villages and towns often grew, including through migration from the rural areas and displacement in conflict areas. Where do people go? They are displaced and they go to cities or towns. So villages that used to have 5,000 inhabitants, 8,000 inhabitants, grew to 20,000 inhabitants and 30,000 inhabitants. So they're starting to look like cities, but they are vulnerable. They don't have the protection that Maiduguri has. So they are easy targets for predation. So, cities concentrate wealth, concentrate trade, etc., but they're targets for predation. So we need to be aware of this urbanization, regardless of whether it's urbanization of conflict. I wrote a piece, a sentence here that I'm particularly proud of, which is it's not just that conflict is coming to cities, it's that cities are coming to conflicts. So cities are emerging in areas of conflict, and regardless of whether we consider ourselves urban enthusiasts like we are, but we need to start to think about what it means for our practice of us here of peace building, thinking about cities in the academic community, conflict prevention, what it means to work in cities, on cities, and with cities and mayors as well.
And I think you can be proud of it. It's a very, it really illustrates very well what you're saying about cities and conflict. So thanks a lot for that. Now move on to organized crime, which is really the heart, of the mission of GTalk. I thought it was super interesting what you wrote about, because we don't really hear much about organized crimes and cities and what's their impact. So it often gets under the radar, organized crime, basically. So although it has a very significant impact on cities as such, growing and growing, as you said, in particular in Africa today, but also in other parts of the world. So can you tell us a little bit more about the issue? What's the issue with organized crime? And why you think that countering organized crime can and should be integrated into peace-building processes?
Yeah, I think that my organization, the GTalk, it has made the case for a long time now, the linkage between organized crime and peace, and the implications for peace building, conflict prevention, and other major security and peace issues. I'm starting to understand. I told this to a few people in the room that I've met in recent months, that I'm starting to understand the Geneva sort of world. So I don't know what is the state of the debate on that. But regardless, I think from the research that we've done, it's quite clear that organized crime poses severe threats to. I think one is quite clear in terms of the physical violence that accompanies much of that urban violence, and the way that it contributes actually in a similar way to conflict in dividing cities, and often through lines that overlap with socioeconomic division. So organized crime has a particular tendency to lodge itself in areas of poor governance, where areas where rule of law and state institutions are weak, and that tends to coincide with low income and especially informal settlements. And we've seen that very clearly in Latin America, where urbanization has proceeded very quickly in the 70s, 60s, 80s with import substitution measures, come to cities, come to work in industries, etc. And a lot of that was unplanned and unmanaged. And the peripheries and informal settlements are now, severely controlled is a controversial term, but at least partially controlled by criminal organizations, gangs, etc. And the other aspect that I think causes organized crime to be slightly overlooked sometimes in discussions on peace and security is that a lot of its most damaging impact is long-term and a bit slow burning, because it tends to infiltrate institutions through corruption, through alliances with political elites. We've seen that in research that we've done, including in cities in Africa and of course in Latin America, how corrupt political elites tend to use gangs, mafia, sometimes called militias. In Nairobi, for instance, every election, the past election was fortunately an exception, but we see around election times a flare up in violence. And when I went there, a few people explained to me this cycle, and it's very interesting that around election time, the gangs that were when it's not election time, they were exploiting things like water provision, water mafias, extortion, robbery, etc. They suddenly, because they are the thugs, that control that area, the violence experts, they are turned into political militias for particular politicians that want to campaign there as a sort of muscle, and they impede the rivals from campaigning in that area, and they intimidate adversaries and other things. And I've seen similar things in Rio de Janeiro, where I research for a long time. So organized crime has this sort of infiltrating and pervasive effect on cities. And unlike conflict, is a problem that is predominantly urban. And it has a severe effect that sometimes is a little bit hidden and in the shadows by the very nature of the problem, and that we need to be more aware of.
What can local governments do, when the city grows so fast that they don't have, the capacity to provide, security, to provide services to those areas growing so fast? So what can you do?
Yeah, I think that increasingly we've seen that this problem is linked to urban governance. Because if we only take a security approach, it becomes everything falls on the head of the police, and the police, especially in Latin America, where this problem is has reached a level that is beyond any other country in the world. The police suddenly has on its back the weight of, frankly, centuries of socioeconomic marginalization, cultural sort of exclusion, socioeconomic exclusion. And one particular project that I cite, and I often get in trouble because it's a project that has its controversies and opponents. But in Rio de Janeiro, there was this program called Pacification Strategy that was very popular around the 2000, someone is nodding, she's gonna call me. Late 2000s, early 2010s, in which they went with the police to certain favelas, certain slums, and unlike other approaches in which the police would go in raids and shoot and kill and whatever, capture whoever they think they should be captured and leave, they stayed in the favelas, and the approach was to try to bring through that sort of almost peacekeeping-like approach to pave the way for socioeconomic infrastructure, things like that. And the reason I always cite that is because it worked for a time. So it really, there are studies conducted by Nasukan and others in Rio that show that homicides very clearly fell in the, the curve is just unquestionable. But it wasn't sustained. And we saw that these approaches that involve a governance approach, bringing infrastructure, they require a lot of political will, and they're simply very expensive. They're very, very expensive because you're trying to retrofit urban areas that were, again, like hundreds of years of mismanagement or not only mismanaged, but being deliberately left out of the development. So neglect as well. So you're trying to retrofit cities of over 10 million inhabitants, like Rio has, for this practice. But going back to your question, local governments, obviously, they can do everything by themselves. But in partnerships with national governments and international organizations, including funding organizations, they can improve this aspect of governance and bringing these communities into the broader fabric of the city, which is what is required to go beyond just the policing approach, which frankly hasn't worked.
Thank you so much. It was super interesting to hear, the three of you on, again, the issue of urban governance, infrastructure, how that contributes to peace in a city, development, basically, by instilling hope to different communities. Let me now open the floor for questions. I hope you have some comments. It can be comments as well, just, not only questions, but sir. We'll take several ones before, giving back the floor to speakers. And please introduce yourself.
Emilia Berut, I'm doing a PhD just next door at the Institute. I'm also doctoral researcher at the CCDP. I have a question to the mayor, but also to Antonio. So essentially, both of you spoke about engagements in peripheries, but also in peri-urban areas. And I just was wondering, like, what is the best way of engaging? I mean, you, Mayor, when you're facing, the IDF, but also, other, as you said, armed actors, which, are dispossessing Palestinians in the Area B. But also, in terms of, non-state armed groups, which are, as we know, clearly servicing and providing goods to populations in those areas. So you're mentioning, outside of Madiguri, but also in other urban areas. Like, what is the best, what are best practices of engaging, whether that be with state representatives or non-state representatives, so that you can actually find an arrangement so that the citizens don't suffer?
Thank you for that. Any other questions, comments to be made, sir, over there?
Yes, hi, Fabian Hoffman from ETH Zurich. I'd have a question to all the panelists.
Sorry, just ETH Zurich, for you to know, is a university in Zurich. I'm not sure how to say this in English. Polytechnique, École Polytechnique in Zurich. But.
Yes, and I think it came up in some of the presentations, and I wanted to follow up on the role of digital technologies in urban peace and conflict. I think innovation hubs and tech literacy were mentioned as potential. So I was just wondering whether you have more examples or reflections to share on how the digital is shaping opportunities for urban peace building or violence prevention.
Excellent, thanks for that. Any other questions online, actually? I know people are following online. Not for the moment? All right. Any other comments to be made? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chips. Pedro Mendes, working with an interagency, small body dedicated to internal displacement, but also working on refugees, so forced displacement. Mayor Kassis, how at the local level, how do you deal with different, what we would call in our community of practice, with different population groups that are mostly coming from, spatially, in terms of origin, in geography, in the territory, are mostly different layers of displacement. And how do you see a possibility of intervention within your mandate, precisely as an elected official, for those different constituencies? Do they project different expectations on you, depending on they are IDPs, refugees, internal migrants? How do you reflect on that as from your position? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other, maybe a last question? Yes, and then we'll go back to the speakers.
My question is for Antonio. I'm Paula. I'm a student here in the Geneva Graduate Institute. I'm from Rio de Janeiro. I'm Brazilian. I'm a criminal lawyer there.
I'm gonna get in trouble.
Seems like it. But no, of course not. And my question is how to protect the human rights of the population in the favelas while, for example, the pacification was occurring, because I was working with the public defendant by that time, and a lot of human rights were violated by the police force, for example, entering house without a legal order or a generic legal order. So how to keep, to sustain human rights during these measures? I'm not trying to
Simple question.
be polemic. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Let me go to you, Mayor, first. Engagement, like
Yes.
with state and non-state representative, and also digital technology. Probably since you're so much into innovation and forced displacement and different layers and different groups of people that have been displaced.
Yeah, well, this is a very critical question, I believe, and it's because it has deeper meanings and consequences, and can make you personally and all understand more the situation there. Just first, let me put this straightforward. It's not IDF, it's IOF. It's because defense from us, we're just powerless. Yeah, but it's how you market it. So you market it as a defense. So you're the one who's being attacked, and which is the other way around. It's very critical for the local government to play such a role, or to assume such a responsibility, because this is far beyond a service provider. Let me put it this way, for the people, for the society. But we have this within our DNA as a local government, as Ramallah, and the idea is to push people lightly and continuously into areas that are not popular to accommodate people. Example, areas close to settlements, areas outside the city centers. And how can we, as a responsible local government that has the well-being and the of people as our top priority, I cannot just push them into this. But for example, 3 days ago, we engaged with the civil society for olive picking. So I went there, I put on all the things that need to be done, and we had lots of students from schools, universities, etc. And we went, all the civil society, the clubs, etc. We went to Area C. Of course, the municipality, what we have in terms of assets is the land. Because when we reparcel lands, 30% of the result of reparcelation goes to the municipality. So we own lots of lands. And the lands, the empty lands in Palestine are literally all olive trees. And olive trees from the Roman time until the very today. So you see a trunk that you cannot practically hug. It's huge in terms of trunk and not the thing. So and this of course tells the narrative of the country, of the city, of that. And we always symbolize our presence like the olive tree. That's why always olive and olive tree is part of our symbols. Not only for peace, but for to be deeply rooted in your country, etc. So So we try such initiatives. We go to rural areas to just clean the suburbs, take students and tell them about the herbs and give them some education about the kinds of herbs, about thyme, za'atar, which is crucial for us. This is something part of our symbol. And meramiye and sage and all these things that grow. And what else? The famous I forgot the name. It will come up now. Yeah, no, not pomegranate. So the idea is to educate the people about their country, their city, the urban side, and physically walk. So that when they grow up, they say, well, I've been there. I was there when I was 13 years old. I came with the scouts and we had a camp there. And the municipality used to, distribute caps, etc. So building memories. These are all small, and I believe small baby steps that I engrave in their minds and hearts and memories for them to keep remembering. Every Palestinian respects the key, because the key symbolizes the rate of return as a banker, the right of return. So the right of return is your key, and therefore you have to keep the memory alive and keep it current here and not here. And such initiatives under the name of preserving environment, working on culture. And in culture, you go and get the thyme and then do pies in the field, and eat and tell stories and sing old songs, read poetries for Palestinian famous poets that speak about resilience and about the country. All some baby steps, extremely, and I say extremely, and I take responsible for this, extremely civilized and peaceful. Nothing offensive. I mean, I cannot promote hatred. I cannot afford to promote hatred. Yeah. So as a Christian, I respect the Muslim and the Jew. As a Muslim, I respect the Christian and the Jew, and I hate occupation. I hate the fatigue, but I don't hate the person. So these things are passed into the public in the most diplomatic, if we put it this way, or very, very smooth shots into the young generation's memory through such moods, such initiatives. This goes in parallel with your question about displacement. People come to Ramallah because we do these things. People not only find refuge and find their identity in Ramallah, they find better place to work. The average paid employee in Ramallah is like 30% higher than in Nablus, Jenin, or in Bethlehem. Why? The demand in Ramallah is high. The 1 liter of fresh milk in Ramallah is 20% higher than in Bethlehem. The residues from your salary, the savings, because we do have saving habits in Palestine and not spending habits, because we live in a high risk society and under occupation. So you always save, and as a banker, I lived this. So promoting savings. So you see, lending to deposits ratio is always low because deposits are high. Deposits are high because people save. So this people come to Ramallah for a better living. Displaced, not necessarily displaced, because the cost of housing in Ramallah is much higher. So it's easier for them to commute. But now these days, because commuting in and outside Ramallah is costly, costly both ways, in life and in money. So you are better off renting a space in Ramallah. And that's why Ramallah's infrastructure is being highly used and sometimes abused by the society. And I come here, I was taking pictures yesterday of these nice places for restaurants that are renting the parking lot across the pavement. I tried this in Ramallah. I had 20 so far. I licensed 20. So you have your restaurant and the pavement for the people to walk, and then the parking you can just rent it for $14 per square meter. So we build the infrastructure 6 by 350, and you can put tables and chairs, and this will expand the space for you to work, and especially after COVID, and people want to stay outside, etc. I'm promoting food trucks, so lots of young people are coming and renting food. I'm licensing lots of food trucks for the people, so people come to Ramallah to work for a better living. Especially, of course, Ramallah has universities, high quality universities, and IB schools. My daughter just finished IB this year, and she started in neighboring Belgium, and this, of course, provides chances in life, higher chances in life when you come and study in Ramallah, etc. As for digitization, and I close in 2 minutes. In digitization, well, I tried this firsthand, and I licensed the first digital wallet in Ramallah. And digital wallet, the idea was to go cashless. And of course, my major supporter and marketer for that are the youth. So the demand force is high. And Ramallah being the hub for the young generation who want to buy the hot dog sandwich from a food truck, they don't want, and they already don't have cash. They have it in their wallet and they want to pay with the wallet. Especially, it's becoming a trend. The municipality was the first to sign agreement with the central bank to be digitally connected to this central clearing system at the central bank that allows digital payments. Now I'm working on Ramallah application to have a wallet within this application, so you can top up the wallet through your bank account and pay the municipal dues electronically, buy your ticket for a cultural activity electronically, transfer to your friend electronically, etc., etc. So we are also promoting as a model, and I talked to the central bank. I was once board member at the central bank. I told them I want Ramallah to be cashless in the mid of 2026. And I want to work with you on a roadmap whereby everything is paid through electronic means in Ramallah. And let's try to make a model. So my way of doing this in Ramallah is to create a model, like models in all what you just said, be it digital, be it chances in life, in education, in work, and in the way of expressing yourself. Even when you express your anger, you can express your anger by simply drawing something. And when you draw something, I just provide you with free internet for you to upload what is there to the world. I don't care about downloading. I always tell my people, just upload what you live. Let the world see. And that's why I provide free internet in the streets of Ramallah for the whole people to upload, visitors, residents, and foreigners who visit Palestine. It's very easy to expose this brutal occupation and what they are doing to us and how resilient people are. Sorry.
Don't be sorry. Thank you so much for your thoughtful answers. Going to Antonio.
So
on human rights, and also engagement.
Yeah, I'll try. I'll start with the human rights aspect because I think it goes to it speaks to a problem that affects cities in different situations in different regions, because often in situations of either intense criminal violence or militias and some levels of political violence, the main tools, the immediate tools that both municipalities or sometimes regional governments and federal governments have are the police. Sometimes it's controlled by the local government, sometimes it's not. And inevitably you have to work around them. And I think Latin America is a cautionary tale to the rest of the world, because over decades of intense criminal violence and having to deal with this inequality in the urban space and this separation between the sort of nice, ideal sort of city and the problem areas, at least that's how they are seen, especially by the police, has bred a generation of confrontational police forces. And the approach in Rio has been particularly strong, reflecting the particularly violent character of the gangs there that have very clear, very demarcated territorial control. They appear on TV almost every day sometimes, with rifles patrolling the territories, a type of visible and confrontational criminal presence that even in Latin America is particularly high. So that has bred sort of a generation of police agents through a force called the military police that has become accustomed to and become proud of its martial abilities, and as a sort of elite unit that goes into the favelas and shoots and gets out. And so during the pacification strategy, the strategy and the vision were widely praised, and the World Bank did reports about the pacification strategy. And as I said, it did lead to homicide reduction, and actually a lot of media reports, and I'm not sure if polls, but a lot of media reports show that residents in the favelas were supportive of the program. But there were high visibility human rights violations, especially when it comes to if a police officer is killed during a confrontation, there is retaliation through outside of justice. So, unlawful sort of disappearances and killings by the police. So that I think has several implications that are not easy to resolve. One is there has to be some level in countries where the situation has evolved, and that is certainly the case of Brazil, to some extent some countries in Central America, the situation in El Salvador, where the approach has been very militarized and securitized, carries problems for the future, especially with the high rates of incarceration and how the criminals are sort of socialized in those prisons. So how the criminal justice system, especially the police, is transitioned or reformed. Unfortunately, in Rio, the debate has become so polarized and radicalized that a lot of even the academic community that tries to come up with solutions has sort of given up. So the academics and the civil society on one side no longer speak to the government and the police. The two sides are very radically apart. So there needs to be this dialogue. And just one quick point on the issue of technology, and I think that technology is a way to bring sometimes these two sides together. So an initiative that I saw in Mogadishu, actually, one of the heads of the police force there was very active on social media, and communities, residents could go to Twitter and can still, I think she's still doing it, and complain or ask a question, and she would reply. So I think that mobile technology and social media has been a sort of a leapfrog solution in that aspect as well, in trying to bring these communities together. And of course, even in Rio, there are many police officers who are very constructive and engaged with the civil society as well. So I think that technology can do that, and civil society as well.
Thank you.
AlHakam, I'm conscious of the time, so hopefully we can take 5 more minutes, especially if there are more questions. But AlHakam, any comments on your side?
Yes, actually, Fabian's question made me think about the use of social media as a form of technology, which Antonio also has talked about. I was co-researcher for a project that where we documented cultural heritage groups for Aleppo. Aleppo's cultural heritage groups that are created on Facebook. These groups are by people who often care a lot about the old city, and they've organically formed these groups, and there's very interesting petty politics of who is admin and who's not, and who said the right thing, and who copied content from who. But they all agree on trying as much as possible to share information about the history of the city, how things were before the war, and what's happened to things during the war, and what reconstruction is taking place. And that's actually often how I keep abreast of the news, exactly, of the developments in the city. And it becomes key for any people thinking about returning and what they could do. It's also a channel for them to ask questions, as comments often on other posts. So this community building, despite displacement, you might be thousands of miles away, but you're still getting the news and asking your questions.
Okay. Can I ask you one last question before we close? Because I think it's a very central question that I found actually in your report. That was a quote saying that cities are central to processes of state consolidation, transformation or erosion. Was in a report of some academia. And my question is really, can Syria fully recover from the conflict if it leaves part of Aleppo in ruins, given the central role of cities for, again, state development, basically, and state future?
No, I don't believe so. I think it won't be viable. Sure, we can lay some monuments as reminders of what happened, but life calls for rebuilding, and people will want to rebuild. And the problem is, if there is this over control of who comes in and who comes out, and who redevelops a certain area, we could end up with a ghost town for the sake of a ghost town. But that's what's unnatural. What's natural is for people to be able to go back and just using the current laws and systems to just be able to rebuild. Until that happens, there's clearly no peace, in my opinion.
Thank you so much. I'm looking, is there any other last comment? I want to give the opportunity. It's not that often that we have such a, panel. No, that doesn't seem the case. So let me thank you, heartfully, for the excellent exchange I think we had about cities, peace, building peace through an urban lens. I think the messages that you convey were very strong about the need, to instill hope for people, the model that you want to create in Ramallah for other parts of Palestine, and how you build, peace at your local level, at the city level, even though you don't have, the keys for the whole Israeli-Palestinian conflict. We all, try to do our part at our level. So thanks a lot. It was very interesting to hear about how urban governance is important. Of course, the question is often resources, how you get resources to be able to provide services in areas of your town that is completely new because of displacement, most often. The question about infrastructure and how you can kill a city, not only its people, but just kill a city, and they're basically leave people hopeless, and that how you can rebuild, a city after a conflict, or even in the midst of a conflict. So thank you for sharing all of that. I'm very grateful that we had such a great discussion. I hope you enjoyed it.